And now we'll hear from the Climate Emergency Unit, and I believe it is Seth Klein that will deliver remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, honorable members. Thank you so much for this invitation. We're delighted for this opportunity to share an exciting idea with you, a proposal for a new federal program, a Youth Climate Corps. I'm the team lead with the Climate Emergency Unit. I'm joined by my colleague, Bushra Asghar, one of the lead organizers of the national campaign for the YCC. I'm also the author of a book called A Good War, Mobilizing Canada for the Climate Emergency, a book that maps out how to confront the climate crisis, but structured around lessons from the Second World War. During the Second World War, Canada had a population of about 11 million people. Remarkably, over 1 million Canadians enlisted, a truly extraordinary mobilization. Of those, 64% were under the age of 21. These young people left their farms, delayed their careers, deferred their studies, because they understood the emergency to be in that moment and heeded the call to serve. Today, in the face of a new defining generational challenge, there are once again thousands of young people who understand the severity of what we confront. They again want to serve, to enlist in this generational challenge. But this time, so far anyway, they have yet to be issued an invitation to do so by their government. I'm going to pass the mic to Bushra to outline our vision for what a Youth Climate Corps could look like.
We're calling for the federal government to create a national paid job training program where anyone 35 and under could apply and sign up for 2 years to do climate adaptation and mitigation work in their communities, a Youth Climate Corps. This would be a barrier-free, government-funded program to train youth for careers in the well-paying green jobs of the future. Our vision of the training is in 3 areas of employment. Stream 1 is emergency preparedness and response work, wildfire fighting, flood responses, low-carbon care work involved during climate emergencies, such as checking on vulnerable community members during heat domes so we don't lose our elders. Stream 2, jobs strengthening our community and environmental resilience to climate change. Conservation positions, ecosystem restoration, shoring up community infrastructure, and the like. And Stream 3, training and jobs that we immediately require to drive our everyday greenhouse gas emissions down, retrofitting our homes and buildings, renewable energy projects, building out our public transit infrastructure. Young people would, we hope, finish this 2-year-long program with a certification like a Red Seal to set them on a path for a long-term career doing this vital work. Built into our vision is a focus on equity-deserving communities who have historically been left behind. This would be a program that turns no one away, federally funded but community-led.
Polling that we have commissioned from Abacus data shows strong public support for this YCC vision across the country. In short, this would be a very popular program with massive interest among young people. Our call is for an initial federal investment in the YCC of $1 billion a year, which would then grow to accommodate demand. Ideally, the YCC would be cost matched by provincial governments, and the deployment of young people would be done jointly with provincial, municipal, and Indigenous governments so that the projects and training align with regional and local climate action priorities that maximize greenhouse gas reductions. With a $1 billion a year investment and a commitment to pay the prevailing living wage of about $25 an hour, the YCC would create nearly 20,000 full-time jobs each year.
In the wake of record world temperatures, escalating extreme climate-induced weather events, and the recent launch of the American Climate Corps, this is a program whose time has come. The Youth Climate Corps would directly tackle the fight of our lives, the climate crisis. It would also address a number of other government priorities and crises that my generation is on the front lines of facing. A national unemployment rate more than double the overall rate, affordability issues, housing, mental health, labor and skill shortages, equity and accessibility initiatives, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. My generation needs a Youth Climate Corps because we're working multiple jobs and still unable to pay our rents, living in an economy and a country that is not prioritizing our future. This is the labor and climate solution young people direly need.
Thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Mr. Klein, Ms. Asghar, I'd like to start with you. The Youth Climate Corps is an intriguing idea. I wonder if you could explain to us briefly how that differs from youth employment programs or training programs that currently exist.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest difference is that what we are proposing would be a 2-year-long program. So we're not just teaching young people how to install a solar panel. I think a lot of current government programs are 4 months long or maybe a year long, but they are not as substantial as what we're proposing, which would be 2 years in length. It would also be paid at a thriving, decent wage, as well as the linkage to a long-term career pathway for young people. So I really think that that is what's distinguishing us from what currently exists in terms of like the basket of different measures for youth.
Thank you. Now, what do you see as the key steps involved in implementing the YCC, and can you outline how the $1 billion per year investment should be allocated?
Well, our hope is that we could get a program stood up fairly quickly, and that would begin with an initial investment in the budget. We do think, there's a logic to this program being cost shared with provincial governments or territorial governments, and I think there's a reasonable expectation that there are a number of provincial governments that would be keen to cost match with the federal government. I'm in British Columbia. I think the BC government might well be interested in that, the Manitoba government, very possibly the Quebec government, the PEI government. I'm thinking about governments with very active climate plans. And I think there's a place here for partnership with post-secondary institutes, and with the labor movement for the apprenticeship piece of this. You can sort of see a trajectory looking south of the border. It was a year ago, September, that the Biden administration announced an American Climate Corps. They invited input from young people and community organizations about the nature of what those jobs could be. They rolled out the program early this calendar year. The first 10,000 young people were employed this past summer. So it can happen when the will is there. It can happen very quickly.
Thank you. I read recently that the true youth unemployment rate is actually quite disturbingly high, somewhere approaching 15-16%. And a lot of young people are despondent, not only about their economic futures, but about the future of the planet. So I'm wondering, what do you see as the anticipated economic benefits of the YCC for Canadian youth and for Canadian society?
I can take a first stab at that if you would like. Sorry, we're not in the same place, so it's not clear which of us should answer. I think there'd be huge payback. First of all, just to take the example of apprenticeships, we know that when somebody has apprenticeship training, their income is about 15 to 16,000 higher than if they just have a high school education. So you can anticipate rolling benefits in terms of earnings, in terms of tax returns back to the federal government. Bushra spoke about the fact that many industries are wrestling with skill shortages. And I think that there are, in fact, climate infrastructure projects across the country that are looking for funding, particularly to train up enough people. We've partnered with Sacred Earth Solar in this campaign and some Indigenous groups where there's all kinds of projects that could be scaled up at a much faster rate with sufficient funding for the training. So there's those clear economic benefits, but as you also allude to, there's mental health benefits. We know from research from about a year ago from Lakehead University, a survey of 1,000 young people across the country, that close to 80% of those young people report that climate change impacts their mental health. About a third of them are it gives them pause about considering having families. So there's something in this call, I think, that beyond the economic benefits, beyond the training and career path, it's this invitation to find a common sense of purpose in doing something that that actually meets this moment.
With Mr. Klein and Ms. Asghar, I was really quite interested in your opening comments, and I think everything that we can do to engage young people and expand the work we do to move very quickly into the green economy is incredibly important. And I know within my province of Newfoundland and Labrador, there's a tremendous amount of focus on really assisting to move our workforce into the realities of where we are in terms of the need to be very quickly move towards a green economy. So there's provincial supports in retraining. There's also industry and apprenticeship. How do you see taking your youth climate core and just beyond the words of collaboration, but how do you see really integrating what you were suggesting into existing programs? And either one of you, whoever would like to go first.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the conversations that we've been having with a lot of the ministries and policy directors of the targeted ministries of this campaign, we do want to look at the shortcomings of existing programs and how to expand that. But in essence, really, it's the program that we envision. The only existing program that's like it, that is existing inside of the government, is the military. If you think about a national paid job training program that's turning no one away right now, that is the military. That, tells young people that if they want in, then there's a space for them. And that's really how we are positioning the Youth Climate Corps, but one that focuses on climate adaptation and mitigation work, because we see the threat that our generation faces. And in terms of Newfoundland specifically, I think what you said is exactly right. All of the issues that we're facing as youth in the Atlantic region are facing it triple as hard, whether that's leaving their provinces to find work, just general skyrocket rents, but the wages are just not lining up. And so it's going to take a whole of government approach to create this model and program, and really looking at the military as one possible option of what this grand undertaking could look like that turns no one away.
My question is for Mr. Klein and Ms. Asghar. When it comes to the Youth Climate Corps that you've advocated for, you mentioned that the U.S. has already, of course, put this into place earlier this year through the American Climate Corps. You mentioned that the price tag being about $1 billion sounds like a lot, but we know if we put a windfall profit tax on oil and gas, we could raise $4.2 billion a year, as Mr. Cochrane also had called for. Can either of you speak to the lessons we can learn from the American Climate Corps of what has worked there over the last few months, and also to the economic impacts of 20,000 young people in full-time work related to the climate economy that we're going to need going forward? What should my colleagues know about the economic impact of a Youth Climate Corps in the midst of a climate crisis? The kind of big idea I think we need at the, as you said, Mr. Klein, the pitch and the pace that we're at right now. Would one of you like to comment on that in about 45 seconds?
Yeah, Seth, if you're good, I think I want to take this one. So based on our research and using the 2023 income tax brackets, we actually found that an incremental income of a YCC graduate would earn, compared to a high school graduate, that's $15,850 per year. The federal government would receive additional income taxes per person of up to $2,700 per year, not including deductions or tax credits. Provincial, territorial governments could receive up to $890 to $2,880 per year, not including deductions or tax credits. And over a 40-year career, this is up to $108,000 in additional revenue for the federal government, and up to $35,600 to $115,200 for provinces and territories. If the YCC creates 20,000 jobs, per year for $1 billion, it would be paid back roughly in 10 to 15 years in additional income tax revenue. And that's not including all of the other things that we've talked about, which are like part and parcel of this incredible policy initiative.
And the only thing I'd love to add to that is that if we did, in fact, pay for this with an excess profits tax or windfall profits tax, as Mr. Cochran suggested there, the net benefit in terms of tackling inflation would actually be positive. Like it would actually help with lowering prices. And there's a lovely symmetry to bring in a windfall profits tax like that to pay for a program like this.